Lu Qingqing trembled hard, unable to say a word. She was scared, and her whole face was pale. It was only after a long time that she regained her senses and knelt in front of the emperor with a thud, her voice choked with tears. "Emperor, it was Sister Gu. It was Sister Gu who gave the medicine to me. She said that this medicine, it would make Fourth Prince fall in love with me. I love him so much, so I listened to Sister Gu. I beg for your mercy to spare my life." Lu Qingqing's words made the emperor shocked. His body became stiff. He clenched his fists tightly, and his breathing grew heavy as if he could not believe that Lu Qingqing would do this kind of thing. He always had a good feeling about Lu Qingqing. She was an excellent girl and the young lady of a noble family. Besides, the Lu family was deeply respected by him. Otherwise, he would not have let Qing'er marry Lu Qingqing as a concubine. However, Lu Qingqing, to get Qing'er, could do this kind of thing and cause Qing'er to be poisoned and fall unconscious. And she framed others. Slap. He raised his hand and slapped Lu Qingqing's face fiercely. The slap made half of Lu Qingqing's face red. She fell to the ground, and there was a trail of blood on the corner of her lips. Her gaze was full of panic. She loved Murong Qing too much. Was it wrong to love someone? She could only blame Sister Gu. She had no enemies, so why would Sister Gu frame her? The Empress' lips trembled slightly. She covered her lips with her hands, and tears flowed down to her fingers. Sister Gu, why would she do that? Lu Qingqing, is it that you wanted to harm Qing'er, but because there was no one to take the blame, so you have framed Sister Gu? It must be you. She rushed toward Lu Qingqing angrily, clutching her lapel tightly. Why did you do this? I adored you so much and treated you well. But why would you want to harm Qing'er like this? Why? Lu Qingqing closed her eyes in deep pain. Her body was shaking, and after a few seconds, she opened her eyes, staring at the Empress standing before her. Empress, what I said this time is all true. Sister Gu is dishonest. I have no reason to plot against the prince. I just want to be his woman. Lu Qingqing. The emperor trembled with anger. Until now, Lu Qingqing still did not understand what was wrong with her actions. Me for extra chapters. He stepped forward and grabbed Lu Qingqing's lapel. His anger raged. You still dare to be so reckless. You have ill intentions toward Qing'er. Drugging to get him is a fault, regardless of whether you used medicine or poison. This is all your fault that he had become like this. If it's not because of your intention, why would you give people the opportunity to take advantage of you? Lu Qingqing's lips were pale. The emperor was right. It was all her fault. Because of her, she had allowed someone to take advantage of the situation. It was because of her that the prince was unconscious. If she could be given another chance, she would not do that again. She would rely on her ability to win his heart. Mother, Nanqiu looked up at Feng Ruqing unblinkingly. Murong Qing has helped me before, so you need to save him. Feng Ruqing withdrew her gaze and nodded indifferently. Fine. She would never refuse Nan Kai's request. Therefore, she took out a piece of spirit herb and handed it to Ah Bao. Take it. Ah Bao stood up and took the spirit herb. It then turned toward the door of the room. The whole courtyard was quiet since Nan Qiu said that. The emperor opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but could not seem to say it out loud. Remorse, guilt, panic, countless emotions gushed out, like the flood. He never thought that after he had treated this girl like this, she would still want to save Murong Qing. Murong Qing helped me, so I tried to save him, but Nanqiu sneered. Lu Qingqing set me up, and you wanted to make a move on me. Now that my mother is here, this matter must be settled between us. Feng Ruqing frowned and looked at those people in front of her coldly. There was a murderous intent in her eyes. The emperor's face was pale. His hands on the sides trembled a little. He clenched his fists tightly, as if it could calm his trembling heart. But the expression on his face still showed the fear he had. I don't want to see Chongqing Kingdom in Songyu mainland anymore. A single sentence had determined the fate of Chongqing Kingdom. The emperor's face turned paler, trembling. Princess Ruqing, it was my fault. I did not know that Maiden Xiaxia is your daughter. I beg you, for the sake of Qing'er, let Chongqing Kingdom go this time. I will severely punish Lu Qingqing to appease Maiden Xia Xia of her anger. Feng Ruqing looked down at the emperor expressionlessly. I really doubt, based on the person you are, that you should take the emperor's seat. The emperor trembled. He knew that this time, Feng Ruqing would not easily let him go. But Feng Ruqing glanced at Lu Qingqing coldly. I also want to know who is the real person who framed Xia Xia. At that moment, someone had already gone to get Sister Gu over. After seeing the guards rushing into the palace, Sister Gu already knew that the cat was out of the bag. She was trembling all the way in, and after seeing Lu Qingqing kneeling, her heart grew even colder. Me for extra chapters. Sister Gu, the emperor growled. Confess it. Did you give the medicine to Lu Qingqing? Sister Gu trembled with fear and knelt, tears flowing from her eyes as she fiercely kowtowed. Emperor, spare my life. Please spare my life. This one sentence made the emperor understand everything. He slowly closed his eyes, and his whole body trembled. He had never felt threatened by anyone for so many years. But now, Lu Qingqing, together with Sister Gu, had almost brought his entire Chongqing kingdom down. Sister Gu, why do you want to harm Qing? The emperor opened his eyes and asked angrily. Sister Gu bit her lip hard and subconsciously looked at the empress, then quickly withdrew her gaze. The prince once punished me severely. I've been holding a grudge since, wanting to take revenge on him. Back then, she was teaching a palace servant a lesson when Murongqing saw her, and as a result, Murongqing had helped that servant and placed the blame on her. That was a fact, and everyone in the entire palace knew about it. Even though Sister Gu thought she had hidden that glance well, Feng Ruqing had caught it. Feng Ruqing smiled coldly. She slowly walked towards Sister Gu. Feng Ruqing raised her hand and grabbed her up from the ground, asking expressionlessly, Tell me, who is the mastermind behind this? Usually, she did not care much about this kind of idle matter. However, this time, it involved Xia Xia, so she had to see an end to this. Sister Gu panicked. She gritted her teeth and said, I don't know what you're talking about. You don't know? Feng Ruqing sneered. I have a spirit herb here that can make your intestines rot. I wonder if you would like to try it? Hearing these words, Sister Gu's body trembled. She gritted her teeth and continued, There is no mastermind. It is my work alone. Her whole family, their lives were in the Empress' hands, so she could never admit it. The Empress' face was pale, and she laughed wryly. Princess Ruqing, look here. This is just a servant's revenge. Why would you think there is a mastermind behind it? Feng Ruqing sneered and looked at the Empress. The one in bed in the room is surely not your son, but I do feel that you do not care even the slightest about the real culprit. Instead, you are bent on blaming this old servant. The Empress' face changed dramatically, and she clenched her fists tightly. Why? Why, when everything was doing fine, Xia Xia turns out to be Feng Ruqing's daughter. If she hadn't appeared, there wouldn't have been so much trouble going on, let alone someone to save Murongqing. The emperor snapped and laughed. She's Qing'er's aunt. She has always treated Qing'er like her son. How could she not care about him? I am increasingly suspicious of how you became the emperor. Nanxian turned to the emperor expressionlessly. Since you are not afraid of death or pain, I am sure that is because someone has threatened you. Go and arrest all the family members of this old servant. I would like to see if she will tell the truth then. The person who could make someone so unafraid of life and death must be some matter in question. But just what was making her not even afraid of death? Unless the one being held was her loved one. Only a loved one could make a person admit to all her sins, regardless of life and death. As expected, after hearing Feng Ruqing's words, Sister Gu's face turned pale. She panicked, and her whole body trembled. The Empress' face also changed dramatically. She bit her lip hard, not saying a word, as if she was thinking of how to get out of this trouble. If you tell the truth now, Feng Ruqing lowered her gaze and looked at Sister Gu. I can guarantee that your loved ones will not be harmed in the slightest. Ever since the Empress had told the Emperor about Feng Ruqing, Sister Gu knew that person's identity. Although she did not know why this person would care about this matter, She understood that she was the only one who could save her loved ones today. Me for extra chapters. My grandson and my children are all in the Empress' hands. It was the Empress who told me to do this. Otherwise, she would capture and kill my beloved ones. Please save them. I will tell you everything. Boom! These words were like a thunderbolt from a clear sky landing on one's head. The Emperor turned to the pale Empress, shocked. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Empress is what Sister Gu said. True? His breathing grew heavy, as if without taking a breath. He could feel his heart hurting badly. From the beginning till the end, he had never doubted the Empress. The Empress was able to ascend to this position because the late Empress trusted her. It was hard for him to believe it, yet somehow it was her. The Empress fell to the ground, tears weeping down. Emperor, I didn't do it. It's all Sister Gus nonsense. She is falsely accusing me. I have always treated Qinger like my own son. How could I do such a thing? The Emperor closed his eyes. He wished all of these were only a misunderstanding. After all, he had trusted her too much. He did not believe the Empress would really be so tricky and cunning. However, Sister Gu was the servant that the Empress brought into the palace back then. She did not have any reason to accuse her. Empress, how will you defend yourself? The Emperor opened his eyes and asked expressionlessly. The Empress fell weakly to the ground. She shook her head and said, Emperor, it really wasn't me. I'm innocent. She must not admit it. If she did, she would definitely not be able to save her life anymore. The Emperor would not spare her. Mother, Nan Qiyu turned to Feng Ruqing. Murong Qing's body has been weak since he was a child. He often gets sick. The people of Chongqing Kingdom said that Flower King could help him to improve his physique. Is it really possible? Feng Ruqing froze for a moment and shook his head. Flower King surely can strengthen the body, but only for the healthy. If the physique is already weak, it will only make him even weaker. The Emperor, who was already filled with disappointment, stiffened once again after hearing these words. Endless anger surged to his heart as he gritted his teeth and said, Go and bring the state preceptor to me. The state preceptor of Chongqing Kingdom was none other than an older man who was busily thinking about dealing with Flower King. He was already worried then, who knew that the Emperor would suddenly send an order for him to go to Fourth Prince Manor. His heart thumped, and he could sense that something bad had happened. So, he was apprehensive all the way there, and when he saw the courtyard was full of people, especially the Empress who was kneeling on the ground, he panicked even more. Emperor, tell me, the Emperor stormed. Why did you deceive Qing and told him that Flower King could cure his illness and trick him into going to that savage land? The state preceptor was so frightened that his legs went limp, and he fell to his knees crying, Emperor, spare my life. The Empress heard that Flower King was guarded by the Wolf King and wanted to trick Fourth Prince to go there so that he would be buried in the wolf's belly. The Empress threatened me, and I did not dare to disobey her. I am begging you to spare my life. Every word spoken by the state preceptor made the Emperor's heart sink even more and felt even a little hurt. He suddenly thought of those times when the Empress felt uneasy about Qinger and wanted to go there to find him. The Empress' concern had even touched him. Now that he thought about it, she probably wanted to go there just to collect Qinger's dead body. Ridiculous. Empress, what else do you have to say now? The Emperor's gaze was cold and stern as he looked at the Empress, with eyes filled with murderous intent. Me for extra chapters. The Empress closed her eyes, and her tears poured. A short while later, she opened her eyes, a cold smile on her mouth. I met you first, but why do you only have your eyes on her? What did I lack that she had? Yet you are always infatuated with her, and you at most only respect me. Why? We are sisters. But why does she have someone who loves her so much, and I have nothing? I can't accept it. There's nothing that I can't do compared to her. Due to that, she hated Murong Qing. Even now, she did not feel that she was at fault. The fault was all on them. If only the Emperor could love her more, she would not have done so. The world thought that the Emperor protected her and loved her, but only she knew that he just respected her, but not love her as his wife. This was not what she wanted. The Emperor was shocked. He had never thought that the Empress would harbor so much hate. It was clear back then that their relationship was very good. Yet, why had it turned into hatred? Feng Ruqing turned to look at the Empress. Framing Xia, was it also your part? The Empress sneered. She did not listen to me. I only allow a person who listens to me to enter the imperial family. So, in the end, she chose Lu Qingqing. Lu Qingqing lowered her gaze, and her face was pale. Only now did she understand that the reason the Empress allowed her to stay in the prince's manor. It was all a conspiracy. It was ridiculous for her to have thought that the Empress was treating her sincerely. Guard, seize the Empress. The Emperor growled. His eyes were filled with rage. Several guards came forward at the Emperor's order, grabbed the Empress' arms, and took her away. The Empress did not struggle at all. She lowered her gaze that was full of despair. After the Empress was dragged down, the Emperor looked at Nan Qiyu, trembling. Maiden Xia, just now Feng Ruqing pulled Nan Qiyu to her side and looked down. Chongqing Kingdom will be removed from the mainland. All the cities of Chongqing Kingdom will merge to other places. That single sentence had determined the end of Chongqing Kingdom. The Emperor's body felt weak. He seemed desperate as he gradually fell to the ground. That endless remorse and anger surged to his heart, causing his body to tremble. This is all Emperor's fault. Everything happened because of her. That bitch deserves to die. Xia, let's go home. Feng Ruqing held Xia's hands and smiled gently. Xia paused and looked back at Nanming. The young man stood under the sun, gazing at Xia. His eyes were filled with warmth. This light was as brilliant as the sun, and it could warm others' hearts. Feng Ruqing followed her gaze and saw the young man standing at the back. She frowned and turned to the young girl in front of her. Her eyebrows were slightly raised. Do you have anything to say? Oh. Nan Qiyu paused and asked, Can I raise him? Feng Ruqing, Nan Xian, and Nan Ming were all speechless. Everyone was confused when she said that. She wants to raise a man? Me for extra chapters. However, looking at the bright smile upon the little girl's face, Feng Ruqing did not have the heart to reject her request. She looked up at Nan Ming. This young man is indeed good-looking. No wonder Xia is so fond of him. But Feng Ruqing smirked. Wolf. Nan Ming answered faintly, and his gaze was fixed upon Xia. The light in those eyes was as gentle as water, as if it could drown a person to death without any struggle. Oh, Feng Ruqing nodded. Then, let's go back together. She was too old to interfere, and the little girl was old enough and had reached the age of understanding romantic love. Nan Xian glanced at Nan Ming coldly. A light flashed in his eyes. If this little girl has a husband, she will not pester Qing'e again later. Let's go home. She had finally found Xia. Feng Ruqing stretched her back lazily. She then slowly turned to the girl still kneeling on the ground, Lu Qingqing. She smirked. We seem to have forgotten that there is another one to settle. This girl wanted to frame Xia. How could I have forgotten about her? Lu Qingqing's face was pale, and her body trembled lightly. She was about to faint, but she held her body upright. Feng Ruqing smiled faintly. I'm not interested in your imperial family's internal conflicts, but you should not have framed my daughter. Based on this alone, Chongqing Kingdom also has no reason to exist. That made the Emperor react and dart toward Lu Qingqing, slapping her fiercely across the face. His expression seemed to burn with anger. Lu Qingqing, it's all your fault. If it weren't for what you have done, I wouldn't have ended up in such a situation. Chongqing Kingdom wouldn't have fallen into other people's hands. Lu Qingqing froze on the ground after the Emperor had slapped her fiercely. She no longer cared about the pain. Her eyes were full of despair. Nan Qiyu did not turn back. She did not even bother to glance at Morong Qing when she walked away with Feng Ruqing. Nan Ming glanced at the Emperor coldly for the last time before leaving the courtyard. They arrived in Luyin Kingdom 2 days after leaving Chongqing Kingdom. Tang Yin stood at the entrance, waiting anxiously. Her eyes lit up when she saw those familiar figures approaching her. However, just as she was about to greet them, she found a young man following Nan Chiyu. The young man was extremely beautiful and charming, with a faint smile on his lips, and his gaze was fixed upon Nan Chiyu. Tang Yin was stunned. Her eyes widened, surprised at the two who walked together from a distance. What's happening here? Xia Xia left alone, but returned with a young man? I don't know how many people will be sad in the future. Since Xia Xia grew up, Princess Manor had long queues of marriage proposals. Now, if she had brought back someone else, Tang Yin did not know how many hearts would be broken. Tang Yin shivered and hurriedly left. I must tell Feng Tianwu about them. At least he is mentally prepared that Xia Xia has brought back a man. Howl. The snow wolf howled and pounced towards Xia Xia happily. When Xia Xia left, the wolf was really bored. Meanwhile, Feng Ruching was only focused on Nan Xian and ignored its existence. Me for extra chapters. When it saw that Xia Xia had come back, it was excited and a smile appeared in its eyes. However, just when it was about to pounce on Xia Xia, a pair of cold eyes suddenly glanced at it from the side, scaring him and making him shiver. It then noticed that Xia Xia was followed by a young man. The young man's eyes were domineering, and his expressionless eyes looked at him coldly. The frosty color in his eyes made the snow wolf shiver and subconsciously take a few steps back. Perhaps the Wolf King's majestic aura was too apparent to the wolf, causing it not to dare to come any closer. It stared at him pitifully. Feng Ruching has Nan Xian, and now Xia Xia also has a man by her side. No one needs me anymore, and I might be kicked out of Princess Manor in the future. Xia Xia, you look tired. Go back to your room and rest. Feng Ruching touched Xia Xia's little head, smiling tenderly. Then, she looked up at Nan Ming. And you, there is a room next to Xia Xia's that is empty, Nan Xian replied expressionlessly. Feng Ruching was stunned and amazed. She turned to look at Nan Xian. Nan Xian lowered his gaze at Feng Ruching and smiled. It seems that Xia Xia likes him a lot. Why not allow them to be close so that he can protect Xia Xia? Feng Ruching nodded. Oh, that's good. He can sleep in the room next to Xia Xia. Looking at Nan Xian and Feng Ruching, Nan Chiyu somehow felt that she had been ignored. It was as if Nan Xian was desperate to kick her away. It was getting late. Feng Ruching told them to go to rest first, and she left. Night fell. The curtain of darkness was drawn. Nan Chiyu was just about to rest when the door of her room was suddenly pushed open. She looked up and saw the young man walking in. The moonlight was pouring down and casting shadows upon his figure. Nan Ming, what are you doing here? Didn't my father arrange a room for you? Nan Chiyu asked with a puzzled gaze. The young man smiled. I can't sleep if I don't sleep on the beams. Speechless. What kind of quirks are these? She pondered for a while. Your place does not have a beam? It is not the same because you are not under that beam. Because you are not under that beam, I can't sleep in peace without you. Nan Kai's face stiffened. Did it mean that Nan Ming would stick to her from now on? Then, all her privacy was gone? Nan Ming, she gritted her teeth. Go back to your room and sleep. As if he did not hear her voice, the young man leaped onto the beam of her room with a single bound and lay down on top of it at ease. His voice was clear. It's late. Go to sleep. Nan Ming, there is a boundary between men and women. Don't you know that? I'm not a man. I'm just a wolf. The young man smiled as he leaped down from the beam, his hand resting against the bed, and his eyes lowered as he looked at the little girl in front of him. I'm only a wolf that can kill and eat people at any time. His voice was gentle, but his eyes were overbearing. Me for extra chapters. You, Nan Chiyu became mad. She was about to say something, but suddenly saw the smile on the young man's face slowly disappear. The silver snake wrapped around her wrist also lifted its small head. King, the young man fell silent. He turned and gazed into the night. Not waiting for Nan Chiyu to ask, the young man suddenly rushed to the night sky and disappeared. The silver snake hurriedly climbed down from her wrist, swiftly following the young man. In a flash, it also disappeared. Nan Chiyu froze. She did not know what had happened, but since she met Nan Ming, it was the first time to see him with such an expression. She pursed her lips and finally chased after them, heading where they had just vanished and left her room. The night was as clear as water, full of silence. The young man stopped in his tracks on the hill with his hands on the sides clenched tightly. His face was cold and sullen. Suddenly, a peal of laughter rang under the night sky. It was extremely demonic, as if it carried the power to compel the heart. Wolf King, I didn't expect you to hide in this place. It took me a long time to find you. I'll see where you can escape to this time. Under the night, a man in red robes walked out slowly. The moment this man appeared, the whole sky seemed to be illuminated. His red robes seemed to glow in the dark. This man looked gorgeous, the beauty of the demon. This time, you're not the only one looking for me. I'm also looking for you. Nan Ming smiled coldly. He raised his hand, and a long sword appeared out of thin air. Decades ago, he was severely injured in a battle with this guy. When he met Nanchiu back then, he happened to be recovering from his injuries. Now his injuries were almost recovered. Even if this guy found him, he would not be afraid. Moreover, now he already had someone that he wanted to devote his life to and protect. The man in red laughed, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. I would like to see what power you have nowadays. You lost to me back then, and now you will lose to me as well. The man turned into a strobe of red light, and in a flash, he was right before the Wolf King. There was an eerie glow in that man's eyes that seemed to give chills to the soul. The young man raised his hand, and his eyes were cold. Lu Yun Kingdom, in the street, Nanchiu seemed to become increasingly anxious. For some reason, she kept feeling uneasy and felt as if something would happen to the Wolf King. The silver snake slithering in front of her was also very anxious. As of just now, Nanming was way too fast. It could not catch up or find where he went. Ayin, have you found Ming or not? Nankai's face was red. Her eyes welled up with tears, and she almost cried. The silver snake shook its head. King left so fast because he wanted to lure that guy away and didn't want to involve you. So, he wouldn't let us find out where he went. Then will Ming be in danger? Nankai's heart clenched, and her gaze was full of worry. The silver snake pondered for a moment. There is something that the Fox King wants from the Wolf King. Back then, the Fox King had injured the Wolf King, and he has not fully recovered even after so many years have passed. Spirit herbs and treatment are useless. But if he is completely recovered from his injuries, perhaps he would still be able to fight. But now, the implication for that had caused his situation to be perilous. Nanchiu pursed her lips and clenched her fists tightly. Her small face was a little pale. Go and inform my parents that I will go to find him. Little Princess Yu, I will find him. At this moment, the young girl's face was lit with determination. It was enough to move people's hearts. The silver snake looked at Nanchiu, turned around, and walked back to Princess Manor. Me for extra chapters. Nanchiu ran toward the city gate without looking back. She always felt as if she had seen Ming from a long, long time ago. At that time, it seemed that Ming had protected her, so this time, no matter what, she had to find him. No one can hurt Ming. Boom! A powerful force came crashing down, causing Nan Ming to take a few steps back. A mouthful of blood gushed out of his throat, but he held it back hard. He could taste something fishy and odd. It made him feel uncomfortable. The man in red frowned and sneered. You have not recovered from your injuries, and you are trying to trick me? You are now deliberately showing up. You were trying to lure me here, right? Are you hiding something in that small kingdom? The young man looked up at the man in red coldly. He smirked. I said, I won't lose again this time. Nanchi was still waiting for him at home. That little girl loved to cry until her nose turned red. What if she cried if she knew that he would not come back? How could he let her shed any tears at all? Perhaps by thinking of the little girl who was waiting for him at home, his eyes were suddenly filled with determination, and the smile dancing upon his lips grew warmer. The man in red frowned. He felt that there was something wrong with the current Wolf King. However, he did not think much about it. Sneering, he flew through the air and instantly landed in front of the Wolf King. He held a powerful, angry flame in his palm and blasted it at the Wolf King. Facing such strong force, the Wolf King did not retreat. Instead, he met the man in red. This battle shook the earth, mountains, and even the surrounding trees at night, ignited by the flame. Nan Ming's eyes were filled with a heavy gaze. His handsome face looked even more impressive against the flames. Perhaps the injury had not yet fully recovered. The fishy and odd taste returned to his mouth, but Nan Ming endured it. He then swiftly rushed toward the man in red. They were both very fast, so fast that only the two residual shadows could be seen in the air. Boom! Suddenly, the man in red was like lightning, breaking through layers of obstacles and instantly reaching him. His palm carried a mighty force that landed fiercely upon the young man's body. He retreated, and a trace of blood hung on from the corner of his lips. Seeing Nan Ming's strong appearance, the man in red smiled coldly. "You have not recovered from your injuries. Wolf King, you are not my opponent. Hand over the ancient box." The young man wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He smirked. "That is the Wolf clan's greatest treasure, and I will never hand it over to you." Rumor had it that the power within this ancient box was so strong that it could cause a disaster if it were really taken away by him. "Since that's the case, then I can only get it by killing you." Whoosh! He was like the wind as he turned into a ray of light. In a flash, he was once again in front of the young man. The young man slowly closed his eyes. The little girl's delicate and beautiful face emerged in his mind, and slowly, he opened his eyes determinedly to look at the man in red. The sky was still dark just now, but unknowingly, it was now dawn. The surrounding trees were all destroyed and had turned into ruin as if they had just been burned. Me for extra chapters. Even the sky reflected red light. He did not know how much time had passed, yet the young man felt that his strength gradually decreased. He could no longer hold on as strongly as before. Once again, he spurted a mouthful of blood, staining the ground red. Even the color of his blood was so stunning. The man in red frowned, somewhat surprised. If the Wolf King's strength had recovered, it would indeed be difficult to deal with him. However, he still hadn't recovered from his injury, so he should not be as strong as he once was. But the fact that the Wolf King could hold out until now really left him amazed. If the Wolf King was not so persistent in hiding the ancient box, perhaps they might have become good friends now. It was a pity. The man in red looked at the young man on the ground coldly. "Wolf King, do you have anything to say? You have been hiding from me for so many years, and now, finally, you are not going to continue to hide?" Nan Ming wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and smirked. He did not say anything as he rushed toward the man in red again. The man in red focused all his power on his hand, and with a boom, that force landed on the young man's chest. The young man fell to the ground as a steady stream of blood flowed from his mouth. However, he was calm. He looked at the imperial city of Lu Yun Kingdom from not far away with regret in his eyes. "Sorry, Xia. I can no longer accompany you in this life. But I have no regrets meeting you." The man in red walked toward the young man expressionlessly. He looked down at him and said, "You have been hiding from me for so many years. Every time I almost catch up to you, you escape. So this time, why did you expose yourself?" Nan Ming lowered his head, and a smile appeared on his lips. Why? Probably because she was the princess of Lu Yun Kingdom. The people in that city were all her people. Every time she mentioned Lu Yun Kingdom, there was a gentle light in her eyes. The entire Lu Yun Kingdom would descend into a living nightmare if he allowed the man in red into Lu Yun Kingdom. Even if Feng Ruqing and Nan Xian could subdue him, countless people would suffer from this. The reason why he was hiding that box was because it was given to him by someone else. He had promised that person to keep it safe, and he would keep his promise. He was unwilling to drag anyone down because he did not want the light in her eyes to disappear. He did not want any danger to befall the kingdom, which she wanted to guard, even if it would cost him his life. "Because I'm tired of hiding," Nan Ming said coldly. "As for the ancient box that you're looking for, I've already destroyed it, and I never told you about it all these years because I just wanted to watch you go crazy over it." The smile on his lips was tinged with coldness, but it caused the man in red to burst into rage. "What did you say? This ancient box, which the ninth emperor left back then, had layers of seals on it, so the world thought that this ancient box must contain a mighty power. It was unfortunate that the seal was difficult to break. Since the seal was so powerful, how did the Wolf King manage to destroy it? Me for extra chapters. Do you think I would believe your words? You must be keeping it somewhere. I just need to kill you, and then I will be able to find it. The man in red laughed coldly, bouncing up to Nan Ming. Nan Ming gradually closed his eyes. He sat on the ground. He was as handsome as a god in his silver robe. However, at this moment, a voice came from behind him, causing his body to stiffen, and his initially calm expression suddenly turned into one of panic. Ming! The voice was filled with anxiety and urgency. When Nan Ming turned his head, he saw the girl running toward him from the back. She was anxious that her face was pale and covered in sweat. There was a hint of eagerness in her eyebrows. The man in red saw the panic in the Wolf King's eyes. He stopped and looked at the little girl approaching them. He smirked. You came here to stop me because of this girl, right? Nan Ming did not answer the man. His gaze was focused upon Nan Qiyu, and even his voice carried an uncontrollable shock. Xia Xia, what are you doing here? Perhaps his tone was too harsh, causing Xia Xia to freeze for a moment, her tears almost falling. I came to look for you. Ever since he met Nan Qiyu, this young man had always been gentle, never raising his voice at her. This was the only time he did. Seeing that Nan Qiyu was about to cry, Nan Ming panicked. He hurriedly used his sleeve to wipe away her tears as regret and guilt filled his gaze. I'm sorry, Xia Xia. I didn't mean to. He was too anxious before that he had accidentally raised his voice a little. Xia Xia's eyes were slightly red. She stood up, stretched her arms, and stood in front of Nan Ming. She tilted her head and looked at the man in red standing before her. No one can bully Ming. Only she could bully him, and no one else could. Looking at the small figure of that little girl in front of him, Nan Ming's heart trembled violently. He grabbed Xia Xia's arm and said, Go. You must go, quickly. Xia Xia did not say anything. She had a face full of stubbornness as she continued standing in front of him. The man in red looked at Nan Ming, then looked at Xia Xia, and suddenly laughed out loud. Wolf King, I didn't expect you to have a woman. When countless women wanted to throw themselves at you, do you remember how you treated them? You also said at the beginning that women are too soft, and you have always disliked them. You only like to be alone. But now, you're going to this extent for a little crybaby, and even got out of your way to lure me and expose yourself. Huh? He had never thought that this Wolf King would one day go to such an extent for a little human girl. He had never expected the Wolf King to also fall in love with a human. Since that was the case, he narrowed his eyes and smiled coldly. Hand over the ancient box. Otherwise, I will kill this little girl. Nan Ming stood up. Although his steps were a little shaky, his expression was firm. Xia Xia, you need to leave this place immediately. Don't look back, oh. Nan Qiyu shook his head. No, I can't leave you behind. Xia Xia. Nan Kai's eyes got even redder. You're mean to me again as soon as she cried. Nan Ming was a bit overwhelmed, and even the firmness just now was forgotten as he scrambled to wipe her tears. Nan Qiyu pouted. She turned and faced the man in red. The tears in her eyes miraculously disappeared, and her small face turned cold. Me for extra chapters. You're the one who has been bullying Ming all these years? The man in red laughed demonically. Little girl, aren't you afraid? Why should I be afraid of you? Nan Qiyu raised her small face. When I brought Ming back to raise him, I had already made up my mind that I would not abandon him. So I will not leave. Brought back to raise? The man in red laughed out loud. Wolf King, so this girl is raising you as a pet. I have never thought that this day would come for you. Nan Ming's handsome face remained expressionless, and his whole body was shrouded in a cold aura. I was willingly raised by her. Humph! The man in red snorted coldly. It seems that you are very sincere about this girl. Now that she has sent herself to me, I don't have to worry about you not handing over the ancient box. With a flash, the man in red was already in front of Nan Qiyu. His fingers were sharp as he grabbed Nan Kai's neck. Xia Xia. Nan Ming looked panicked and hurriedly stepped forward to pull Nan Kai's arm and into his arms. That palm landed on Nan Ming's back sharply as it directly cut his skin. Fresh blood seeped from his back, staining his robe red. Looking at the blood on Nan Ming's back, Nan Kai's heart felt fiercely stung. It seemed that, at some point, she was once protected like this. However, that seemed like way too long ago, and she could not remember it. Just as Nan Kai's heart was pumping with pain, it was just in time for her to see the man in red appear again. This time, she did not give Nan Ming another chance to protect her. She pushed him away with one hand. Boom! When the man in red's hand was about to fall upon Nan Kai's body, a light surged from her surroundings, forming a barrier in front of her and making the man in red bounce away. The man in red was surprised. He frowned and looked at Nan Qiyu hesitantly. This girl is not as simple as she seems in the streets of the imperial city. Feng Ruqing stopped in her tracks. She looked up at where the light just passed in front of her, and her face suddenly fell. I have found you, Xia Xia. When Xia Xia was thrown to the savage land by Nan Xian, she had given Xia Xia the amulet of protection. And now the amulet worked. She was able to find her whereabouts. However, this amulet of protection was only effective once. So she must get to Xia Xia as soon as possible. Nan Xian, let's go. I want to see who dares to touch my daughter in my Lu Yin kingdom. A cold light flashed in her eyes, and her cold smile grew wider. At the top of a hill, Nan Qiyu opened her eyes. She looked at the man in red before she walked to Nan Ming's side and helped him up from the ground. The man in red looked at the jade pendant that fell on the ground and smiled coldly. This jade pendant should be your amulet. Now that it is broken, little girl, let's see how you will still be able to hide from me. Nan Qiyu pursed her lips. Who told you that this amulet only has the effect of protecting me? The reason she had deliberately let the amulet work was to show her mother where they were. It would not take long for her mother to find them, and by then it would definitely be the end of this guy. Xia Xia, hide behind me later. Nan Ming stood up straight. He was still staggering a little, but he was a lot more stable than just now. I'll main you me for extra chapters. Believe me, it will be fine. Both you and me. Nan Ming smiled and touched Nan Kai's head as he gazed at her gently. Now he was also no longer an ordinary person like he was. Xia Xia came. Then no matter what, he would protect her and never let her be in harm. Nan Ming's body gradually changed in the moonlight, and in a moment, a silver wolf stood under the moon. This wolf was extremely beautiful, stunning others. It was as fast as a gust of wind. Nan Qiyu froze. Looking at the wolf, an image gradually appeared in her mind. Deep in the mountains, the little girl was being chased after to be killed, and a wolf came and saved the little girl from those people. This image was a little blurry before, but in the end, it became clear, making Nan Kai's body stiffen slightly. Big doggy? These words involuntarily came out of Nan Kai's mouth, making her eyes moist. The Wolf King subconsciously stopped for a moment, but he did not turn back and went toward the man at the fastest speed. He promised her that he would protect her, so he was bound to do it. Just like 10 years ago. 10 years ago, he returned Xia Xia to her parents, and 10 years later, he was still able to bring her back safely. A wolf growled, shaking the sky and earth. The deserted forest shook, and the birds of prey that had been affected by the battle were also leaving in a hurry, not daring to continue to stay in the forest. The Wolf King did not turn back, and he did not even look at Nan Qiyu. He knew that the little girl behind him was the one he needed to devote his life to protect. So, he put his mind on the battle before him. The man in red saw that Nan Ming was so protective of the girl. The smile in his eyes got even colder. He had never thought that the Wolf King would be like that. Before this, he was heartless and ruthless. But now, he was so attentive to this little girl. Especially when the little girl was crying just now, the panic in the Wolf King's eyes was so obvious. Wolf King. The man in red faced the Wolf King who was coming toward him and smirked. You had no weakness at all before. But now you have a huge weakness that is this little girl. If I want to deal with you now, it is easier than ever." Nanming looked up at the man in red. He then smiled coldly, so cold that it made people shudder. "You're wrong. I did not gain a weakness from having her. In fact, I have no weakness anymore." The man in red frowned, and the smile in his eyes was somewhat contemptuous, obviously unconcerned by the Wolf King's words. Because Nanming finally turned back and looked at the little girl behind him. His smile was gentle, without the coldness like when he faced the man in red. "At last, I have someone I want to protect, and I will definitely sacrifice everything to protect her. I will never let myself be defeated by you once again, let alone fall for your treacherous schemes." The man in red did not speak more. He raised his hand, and a long sword appeared out of thin air. He held it tightly in his hand. Immediately, he rushed toward Nan Qiyu, who stood behind Nanming. He was as fast as a gust of wind, with a cold light in his eyes and voice stiff enough to make people's bones shiver. "Then, I want to see whether she is your weakness or what you said." Just at the moment when the man in red was about to reach Nan Qiyu, Nanming moved, and he was already in front of her. His silvery fur, under this moon, carried a dazzling light. At that moment, it made Nan Kai's heart tremble. Me for extra chapters. The Wolf King bit down on the man in red sword, and with one fierce push, he bit down on half of the blade. The man in red's eyes narrowed, and the cold smile on his lips widened. He simply dropped the sword and swiftly, once again rushed toward Nan Qiyu. However, every time he wanted to get close to Nan Qiyu, he was stopped by Nanming. The wolf's power had also increased a lot, and he was as fast as lightning. Nan Kai's gaze was always fixed upon Nanming. The scene in front of her was so familiar that her eyes were red, unblinking. It seemed that when it came to Nanming, she could no longer look at anyone else. The man in red was forced back several times. The cold smile on his face finally disappeared, and his face darkened as he looked at Nanming. "Nanming, you think this can stop me? Since she has become your weakness, she will certainly be with you all the time, and I will always find the opportunity to destroy both of you." Indeed, Nanming could not always be protecting her. Due to that, he could always find the opportunity to kill him. The man in red smirked when he thought of this, and this time he did not continue to approach Nan Qiyu, but he faced Nanming instead. At the moment, the man's aura strengthened steeply. It was colder and heavier than just a few moments ago, which made the sky seem quite gloomy. The storm suddenly appeared. Nanming's face changed dramatically. He looked up at the man in red in front of him coldly. In the blink of an eye, Nanming was already in front of the man in red. He was like lightning, so fast that no one could see him move. Looking from afar, one could only see the silver figure running in the morning light, looking so stunning. Nan Qiyu behind, Nanming clutching the broken amulet. She looked behind her from time to time, seeing that those she wanted to come had not yet appeared. She could not help but feel anxious. Soon, she withdrew her gaze and once again looked at the Wolf King. The Wolf King's voice echoed through the sky, so loud that it shook the mountains and forests. He moved faster, which made the man in red's expression grow dark. As Nanming approached the man, Nan Qiyu trembled a little. She clenched her fists tightly, and she looked at Nanming unblinkingly. She even found it difficult to breathe. Boom! Strong energy from those two exploded around them, destroying the surrounding trees and the entire mountain forest. The figure of the man in red turned into a ray of light, taking advantage of the Wolf King, who was retreating at the moment, and rushed toward Nan Qiyu. Only this time, he did not reach Nan Qiyu, but instead, he stopped a short distance away and set off a burst of power in his hand, which was like a dragon coming out of the sea. In just a short moment, it had almost reached Nan Qiyu. Nan Qiyu took a few steps back. She accidentally fell to the ground, and she could only watch as the murderous red light sped by. Xia Xia. The Wolf King was shocked and swiftly headed toward Nan Qiyu. Unfortunately, this time it was too unprepared. It was too late for him to resist it even though he had rapidly rushed over. However, looking at Nan Kai's delicate little face. The Wolf King did not know where he found the strength when all of a sudden he was standing before her, blocking the sudden burst of energy with his body. Poof! He spurted a mouthful of blood, staining the ground red. Me for extra chapters. However, the Wolf King did not even care about himself. He hurriedly gazed at Nan Chiyu, and only after seeing the little girl was safe did he sigh in relief quietly. It's good that you're okay. Earlier, he thought that this bastard had given up on striking at Xia and was only focused on fighting him, but he did not expect that he would want to hurt Xia again. He would never forgive anyone who hurt Xia. The Wolf King stood up, perhaps because of the severity of that attack just now. It was still trembling a bit and unable to stand firmly on its feet. His expression, however, was even more determined than just now. Ming. When Nan Chiyu saw Nan Ming in such a condition, her heart ached. She suddenly went forward, pounced over, and hugged Nan Ming tightly. Nan Ming stiffened slightly. He slowly closed his eyes and finally stopped. Ming, that's enough. Don't fight anymore. Xia. When Nan Ming turned his head, he was confronted with the little girl's beautiful eyes. Her eyes were filled with tears, which made Nan Ming's heart hurt a little. He hastily wiped away her tears with his paws. The originally domineering wolf eyes were filled with pain. Ming, I remember now. Nan Chiyu hugged Nan Ming tightly. 10 years ago, you saved me, but I forgot about you. Nan Ming was slightly stunned. He tilted his head and met the young girl's eyes. The young girl's eyes were no longer in tears, but instead, she was smiling gently but firmly. You have protected me before. This time, I want to protect you. How could she allow Ming to protect her every time she got hurt? Back then, Ming had saved her from those people. So this time, it was her turn to save Ming. The man in red frowned and looked at the young girl coldly. Even the Wolf King now was not his opponent, let alone a little girl. Little girl, you have a death wish. The man in red raised his hand, materialized a sword out of thin air, and pointed it at Nan Chiyu. Nan Chiyu stretched out her arms and pushed the Wolf King behind her. As long as I am still here, you are not allowed to bully Ming. The little girl's expression was so firm and serious, and it made people tremble a little. The man in red did not speak. He sneered and rushed up. Nan Ming's face changed dramatically. Endless anger surged to his heart, which made his eyes red. Strong power rose around the Wolf King, gathering up the fallen leaves and making them float in the air. However, just then, there was a loud boom, and a powerful force cut through the air and landed violently upon the man in red's body. The man in red spurted a mouthful of blood, and his body turned into an arc as he flew backward before falling to the ground. He looked up in shock and gazed ahead. A woman in a red dress stood under the moonlight, stunningly beautiful. The man, next to her, was handsome and beautiful like an immortal, looking even more remarkable under the moon. Mother, me for extra chapters. Nan Kai's tears flowed the moment she saw the woman, making people's hearts ached a little. Feng Ruqing lifted her hand and pulled Nan Chiyu into her arms. She turned and looked at the man in red. Murderous rage filled her eyes. You? The man in red looked a little shocked. He could not believe that there were people who could defeat him here. Was it because he only focused on chasing the Wolf King all these years so much that he had missed out on many things? Mother! Nan Chiyu raised her delicate and pretty little face pitifully. It's him. He bullied Ming and tried to kill me just now. Feng Ruqing raised her hand and set off a gust of wind, sending it to the man in red. The man was once again lifted away, making him spit blood. His face was pale and filled with shock. Who the hell is this woman? Why is she so strong? However, Feng Ruqing did not give him another chance to speak before she attacked again. This time, she stood high in the sky, looking down at the man in red on the ground. Did you want to kill Xia? The man in red clenched his fists tightly. Who the hell are you? Me? Feng Ruqing sneered. I'm the person you can never afford to mess with. Thud. She raised her leg and kicked the man in red a few meters away. With that strength, how dare he be so arrogant earlier? Feng Ruqing lowered her gaze and looked at Xia Xia in her arms as she asked, Xia Xia, did he touch you? Xia Xia shook her head. But he hurt On Ming, and from what he said, it seems like he has been chasing On Ming for a long time. The old injuries on Ming's body are also his doing. Feng Ruqing raised her eyes to look at the man in red, and she slowly walked toward him. Every time Feng Ruqing took a step forward, the man in red's heart could not help but tremble. He moved backward, his eyes full of panic. It seemed that he was really frightened and no longer had the arrogance he initially had. Who are you? The man in red gritted his teeth as he asked. Feng Ruqing's face was expressionless, and there was a coldness in her gaze. You shouldn't have come to Lu Yun Kingdom. I'm just here to find the Wolf King, and it has nothing to do with you. The man in red's face darkened. Feng Ruqing stopped. She raised her hand. A long sword appeared in her hand out of thin air, and then she pointed it at the man in red. Unfortunately, Xia Xia won't let you hurt him. Facing the man in red, Feng Ruqing was expressionless. A light cut through the sky as she raised her sword, and it landed on the man in red. To his death, he had never thought about who the person in front of him was and why there was such a strong person hidden in a place like this. Unfortunately, he was not given a chance to say any last words before he fell into a pool of blood, his eyes wide open dead. Feng Ruqing put the sword back, turned around, and walked toward Nan Qiyu and Nan Ming. Let's go. Nan Qiyu seemed to have thought of something and turned to look at Nan Ming. Ming, the ancient box he mentioned just now, did you really destroy it? Nan Ming shook his head. He gradually turned into a stunningly beautiful young man standing in front of her. The young man's face was pale, but it did not diminish his beauty in the slightest, and there was a hint of tenderness in his eyebrows. No, I was lying to him just now. After saying these words, he took out the ancient box. Feng Ruqing frowned as she saw the ancient box. Her gaze was fixed upon it. She walked toward Nan Ming and snatched the box away. She then cautiously caressed the box with a nostalgic look in her eyes. Nan Ming froze, but did not speak more. He turned and looked at Feng Ruqing calmly. Me for extra chapters. Feng Ruqing looked at Nan Ming. She took a deep breath and asked, Why is this thing in your hands? Nan Ming pondered for a moment. This is my clan's greatest treasure back then. The clan's elders handed it to me before they died. Do you know about this ancient box? Feng Ruqing smiled faintly. More than knowing, I'm simply too familiar with it. Mother, just now, that person said that this box was left by the 9th Emperor. Nan Qiyu blinked and said earnestly, MHM. Feng Ruqing nodded. A smile bloomed upon her lips. Indeed, I have been looking for this for a long time. Nan Ming was a little surprised, but only for a moment, and then he felt normal again. But Feng Ruqing waved her hand, breaking the seal. She slowly opened the box. Nan Xian smiled gently as he saw the letters placed inside the box. I didn't expect that these would cause such a big calamity and have the Wolf clan be hunted down. Mother, Nan Qiyu was a little hesitant. What are these all about? Oh, it is your father's mistake back then. I asked him to write an apology letter, but in the end, he wrote a love letter. It has been sealed by me. Until later, this box was stolen, never to be found again. Nan Qiyu was dumbfounded. Did her mother mean that the man in red had hunted down Nan Ming for so long, just for this love letter? She looked back at the man in red behind her, and suddenly felt that he had died somewhat unjustly. Let's go. Feng Ruqing turned to Nan Xian and smiled gently. State Preceptor Nan Xian raised his hand and gently wrapped his arm around her waist. His smile was as warm as a clear spring, just like when they had first met. Nan Qiyu followed Feng Ruqing, staring at the two people in front of her. She pursed her lips, turned to Nan Ming, and asked, 10 years ago, that wolf was also you. Why did you not tell me that at first? She became furious as she thought of that. This damn Nan Ming has lied to me not only once or twice. Nan Ming raised his hand and held Nan Kai's hand. Back then, you never thought of me as a wolf. He was afraid that even if he said that, Nanshiyu might not believe him. Moreover, the things which happened 10 years ago had already passed, and what he wanted now was the current Nanshiyu. Nan Ming. Nanshiyu gritted her teeth and grabbed Nan Ming's lapel. You have lied to me so many times. If you want me to forgive you, that is never possible. You still. Nan Ming subconsciously frowned and seemed to be somewhat physically uncomfortable. Seeing his expression, Nanshiyu froze for a moment, panicked. However, she tried not to show it. She snorted and arrogantly said, "For the sake of your injury, I'll forgive you this time." A gentle smile grew upon Nan Ming's face as he heard these words. Xia xia. He raised his hand and pulled Nanshiyu into his arms, hugging her tightly, as if the girl in his arms was his world, and he would never let her go. It is an honor for me to meet you in this life. A bright smile bloomed upon his face. 10 years ago, when Mother came to pick me up, you left without saying goodbye. So this time, will you still leave? I want me for extra chapters. 10 years ago, he was seriously injured and did not want to drag Xia Xia down with him. Now, he had no more reason to leave her. He would never leave her. Oh, Nanshiyu left his embrace and raised her head. The smile on that little face of hers carried an innocent splendor. This is your promise to me. If you leave without saying goodbye again next time, in the future, you will never see me again. Nan Ming bowed his head. His gentle gaze fell upon the young girl's exquisite and beautiful face. Never. Pinky swear. The young girl smiled faintly and extended her finger. Nan Ming froze. He was a little confused but still followed the young girl's gesture and hooked her finger. The morning sun warmed the ground that had been turned into ruins. It warmed Nankaya's heart today. Perhaps they were destined to be together since the first encounter 10 years ago. Now, they were holding each other's hands together and never letting go again. After walking up ahead, Feng Ruqing looked back again and saw the two people under the sunlight. She smiled faintly, turned around, and walked back to Lu Yun Kingdom. Her figure gradually faded away, leaving only the young girl standing in the sunlight. In a small town of Feng Yun Kingdom, the sky was dark. Countless skilled masters were standing in the air. They held long swords that were all pointed at the girl standing on the ground. The girl was in a mess, covered in blood, but her gaze was unwavering. She looked coldly at those skilled masters who surrounded her. Her eyes were cold as she clenched the long sword in her hand tightly. Shen Qingwan, are you still trying to escape to this place? Remember, everyone in this town died because of you. It was an honor that our young master liked you, but you ignored him. Now you've dragged everyone down with you. You will be blamed for this. The girl named Shen Qingwan clutched her long sword tightly. Her mouth was stained by blood, and her face was pale. Bottomless anger, as well as hatred, surged to her heart as she heard those words. Capture her and bring her to our young master. As the head of the group, the elder snorted coldly, and even the way he gazed at Shen Qingwan carried a hint of disdain. He did not like this girl. Shen Qingwan took a few steps back. She seemed cautious. Her hand holding the long sword trembled slightly. She looked at the dead bodies strewn everywhere and gradually closed her eyes. She had dragged everyone down. These people were right. She was a despairing sinner. She must avenge these people even if it would cost her life. Suddenly, Shen Qingwan opened her eyes that were filled with a deep hatred. Steeply, she moved toward the skilled masters. However, there were so many people on the other side. No matter how hard she tried, she could not kill everyone with her sword. The elder smiled coldly as he saw Shen Qingwan's desperate look. This girl should be proud to marry young master as a concubine, but she would rather die than obey him, and thus she has dragged everyone in the town down with her. The elder waved his sleeve and instantly rushed toward Shen Qingwan. His palm landed upon her chest, sending her flying backward and landing in the crowd. She spurted a mouthful of blood, staining the ground red. The elder pointed his long sword at Shen Qingwan with a ruthless look in his eyes. Me for extra chapters. Shen Qingwan, in giving you a chance. Are you willing to follow us? Shen Qingwan laughed coldly. The smile on her lips arched even more with a sneer. "You have killed so many of my villagers, and you want me to follow you? Ridiculous! I would rather be buried here than submit myself to him." "Young master said if you are unwilling, only can I." The elder raised the long sword in his hand expressionlessly. A cold light flashed on his long sword. However, the moment his long sword was about to fall, a light came from the back, seemingly like lightning, and penetrated his chest with a boom. Blood seeped out of his chest, staining his lapel red. His pupils widened, and he fell with a thud. The whole city fell silent. Shin Qingwan slowly looked up until her eyes fell upon the person in the sky. A stunning figure in a red dress stood in the sky. However, she could not see that person's face because a mask covered it. She could not tell whether that person was a man or a woman. Shin Qingwan froze as she looked at the person in front of her with fascination. A hint of amazement flashed in her gaze. The skilled masters also stopped rushing to her, and all their eyes were fixed upon the person above. It was as if the entire sky were reflected by her stunning beauty, making the sunset even more beautiful than ever. "You." Suddenly, someone among the crowd let out a shocked voice, trembling. "You are the ninth emperor?" The figure in red turned and looked at the person who spoke. People could not see her face but could feel her eyes move. Even her voice was so intense and shocking. "Did you kill all these people just now?" Her words were cold and unnerving. Shin Qingwan finally regained her senses and kneeled on the ground. Her voice was filled with grief and anger. "Their young master of Xianming clan took advantage of me the last time and forced me to be his concubine. I didn't want to, so they slaughtered everyone in this city." She did not want to be his concubine. She did not want to be with someone she did not love. So why did they involve so many innocent people? Until now, Shin Qingwan did not understand why the influential people in this world were so arrogant and cruel. She trembled slightly. The ninth emperor descended from the sky and approached the young girl kneeling on the ground. She placed her hand in front of her, and there was a hint of warmth on her cold expression. "Stand up," however, her voice was so domineering. Shin Qingwan froze and looked at the ninth emperor in confusion, but she still put her hand on her palm and slowly rose from the ground with her help. "Remember, don't kneel before anyone, even me. Never." The ninth emperor slowly turned and glanced at the crowd. Her gaze was cold and heartless, and her voice was as bland as the wind. "Because the ones who should kneel are them." Endless energy surged around her, raising a storm in the city. This storm was cold, making people shudder. "Me for extra chapters." "Ninth Emperor." One of the skilled masters was shocked. "Why would you want to meddle in this troublesome business? Numerous forces in this mainland have long been dissatisfied with you. In this tough world, the weak are not qualified to survive, and you, poof." As soon as the man said that, a sword appeared out of thin air and pierced through his body. His eyes widened abruptly, and he fell backward with a thud into a pool of blood. The ninth emperor put the sword back and looked at Shin Qingwan next to her expressionlessly. "Are there any other alive men in this city?" Shin Qingluan's heart ached, and she shook her head. She lowered her gaze that was filled with grief and pain. "There are no more." "Oh." The ninth emperor nodded with empathy. "I get it." So she offered her hand and pulled Shin Qingwan to her, holding her waist tightly. Shin Qingwan looked up and into the ninth emperor's eyes. Her heart suddenly beat faster, and she quickly lowered her gaze. She acknowledged that if it were not for the ninth emperor, perhaps she would not have survived today, let alone taken revenge. She owed the ninth emperor and must spend her entire life to repay her. The ninth emperor raised her hands. The ground suddenly burst into flames and was like a dragon, engulfing all the people before them. They burned in the fire and could not even escape it. "Let's go." The ninth emperor released her hand and walked out of the city. Before Shin Qingwan left, she took one last look at the city, which was engulfed in flames, and she slowly closed her eyes, her gaze filled with grief. This was the place where she had lived since childhood, and now there was nothing left there. Xianming clan. One day, she would personally kill her enemies with her hands and avenge the innocents who had lost their lives. Shen Qingwan turned around, followed the ninth emperor, heading toward the city gates. She never looked back at the blazing fire that rose behind her again. But the flames reflected her back, so resilient and unyielding. Ninth Emperor, Shen Qingwan, stopped in her tracks as she arrived outside the city. Her gaze fell upon the person in front of her. "Thank you for saving me earlier." The ninth emperor turned around calmly. "That's nothing. You can go now." Shen Qingwan was slightly stunned. She bit her lip and lowered her head. "I have nowhere to go. Can I follow you?" The ninth emperor turned her back on Shen Qingwan behind her and stared into the void. A gust of wind blew. Her red dress was fluttered in the wind. "Over the years, I have offended many and made countless enemies. If you follow me, you are bound to face many dangers. You have saved my life. I'm not afraid of anything. I also want to find Xianming clan and get my revenge. I will pay with my whole life as the price." Shen Qingwan raised her shiny gaze. The light in her gaze was so dazzling that it was more brilliant than sunlight. In the light breeze, the ninth emperor raised her hand and gently took off her mask. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, so stunningly beautiful. Shen Qingwan was stunned seeing her beautiful face. Her skin was as translucent as jade, perfect and flawless, absolutely beautiful. What was more shocking was the famous ninth emperor. Was she a girl? And so stunningly beautiful. Me for extra chapters. You're a woman? Do you know how to cook? The ninth emperor frowned and asked indifferently. Shen Qingwan blushed, and she lowered her head. "No." "Oh." The ninth emperor looked a little disappointed. "I came out this time to find someone who can cook, but in the end there is still none." Her tone was filled with disappointment that it made Shen Qingwan feel wronged. I can try." Shen Qingwan lowered her head, blushing. The ninth emperor shook her head. "Forget it. We'll just go find someone else who can cook later." Hearing this, Shen Qingwan panicked. She rushed toward the ninth emperor and said, "I can't cook now, but I can learn. Please, do not leave me in this place. I have no home, and I am willing to learn anything. As long as you can take me with you." Shen Qingwan trembled, her eyes filled with sorrow. She no longer had a home now. The ninth emperor was her last hope, and she did not want to let it go. The ninth emperor turned around, looked at the girl behind her, and asked, "So, what are you still standing there for? Why don't you follow me? It's getting late. We should go back now." Shen Qingwan was dumbfounded. She looked at the figure in front of her, and a warm feeling surged in her heart. She hurriedly followed her, strolling toward the sunset. The two figures gradually disappeared in the evening sun. The Fengyun Kingdom border was crowded these last few days, making the people a little uneasy, especially the residents who lived near the border. The place was in darkness. All the people from various major forces came with heavy expressions. "I heard that something strange happened at the border of Fengyun Kingdom lately. A treasure has appeared, but I don't know what this treasure is." The man in green robe spoke. His face was cold as he looked around cautiously. "I didn't expect Long Eagle Sect to come as well." Just as he said that, an old master in gray robe slowly stepped forward. He smirked and turned to the green-robed man next to him. "Young Master Zhang, long time no see." Zhang Tian sneered. It seemed that this time, the mystery treasure had attracted a lot of people. Even this old master of Everlasting Life sect was interested in it. However, no one knew what it was. Zhang Tianwen ignored the old master. He turned to look at the sky and frowned. "More people are coming. We need to go first. We must not let these people get to the treasure." Unfortunately, soon as Zhang Tianwen said that, a powerful force appeared and spread across the sky, shocking everyone. Zhang Tianwen stopped in his tracks. He turned to look at the sky behind him. His breathing suddenly grew heavy, and his expression abruptly tensed up. The crowd's faces also changed dramatically. They seemed panicked as they looked at the bright sky. A figure in a red dress appeared in the sky, looking so overbearing. She wore a mask, stood in midair, and stared at the people present. Ninth Emperor? Why did she come? Didn't they all keep this news from her? Yet she was here anyway. Me for extra chapters. This place is really lively. The Ninth Emperor laughed. I wonder what are you all gathering here for? Zhang Tianwen smiled faintly. We're just taking a walk here. Yeah, just strolling around. That's right, that's right. We're bored, so we're just strolling around. The old master who had just spoken to Zhang Tianwen immediately responded. With these two speaking this way, the others also hurriedly nodded along. We can't let the Ninth Emperor know that there's a mysterious treasure hidden here. Otherwise, the treasure will be snatched away by this robber. Oh, the Ninth Emperor waved her long sleeves, chuckling. Is that so? From her tone, one could sense that she did not believe them. Everyone looked pissed, and some people even cursed the person who had revealed this to the Ninth Emperor. However, at this moment, someone suddenly spoke, breaking the silence. Xinqingwan, you're here too. This voice was filled with arrogance. Everyone was stunned, following that person's gaze to the young girl who stood at the back of the crowd. That girl was indeed as beautiful as a painting. However, no one knew where this girl came from. Moreover, everyone's eyes were focused on the Ninth Emperor, and they did not notice this girl. Xinqingwan heard this familiar voice. She trembled as she clenched her fists tightly and closed her eyes. Endless anger surged in her heart. The young master of Xianming clan, Ouyang Ying, when the crowd saw Ouyang Ying's reaction, they were also somewhat surprised. It was said that this Ouyang Ying was born perverted. He already had countless beautiful concubines in at home, but soon as he saw another beauty, like how he saw this beautiful girl now, he would intend to take her as a concubine. However, based on the girl's reaction, she did not like Ouyang Ying at all. The old master standing next to Ouyang Ying deliberately lowered his voice and said, Young master, the Ninth Emperor is here. We still, Ninth Emperor. Ouyang Ying smiled and looked up. This girl is my concubine. I never thought that I would find her here with another man. I believe that you need to return her, right? In this mainland, the strongest ones were the most important, and the weaker had no chance to survive. The Ninth Emperor had suddenly appeared in this mainland. She had never been in any forces and would forbid them to bully the weak. So, all the forces hated her, but still, they could not do anything about her. Therefore, he needed to find an excuse if he wanted to take Shan Qingwan back. To him, Xinqingwan should be grateful that he was willing to take her as a concubine and should not reject his offer. The Ninth Emperor rested her hand on her cheek and looked at Ouyang Ying smilingly. Really? Ouyang Ying turned to Xinqingwan, warning her with his eyes, and then turned to the Ninth Emperor. Yes, it's true. This bitch ran away with someone else. I'll take her back and teach her well. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew across the sky, and in the blink of an eye, the Ninth Emperor was standing in front of Ouyang Ying. Me for extra chapters. With a poof, her leg landed heavily upon Ouyang Ying's body, instantly kicking him away before he landed in the middle of the crowd. Ouyang Ying spurted a mouthful of blood. He looked up at the Ninth Emperor angrily. Ninth Emperor, why would you still want to meddle in such a matter? Boom! The Ninth Emperor raised her hand and once again grabbed Ouyang Ying from the ground. Her mask refracted a cold light in the sunlight. It was cold enough to send a chill down one's spine. Ouyang Ying's face darkened, looking at the Ninth Emperor with even more monstrous anger. However, the Ninth Emperor then strangled him fiercely. She smiled coldly. Unfortunately, when I came just now, I passed by a small city, and I happened to see your Xianming clan's people slaughtering the residents to force a girl to be a concubine. Ouyang Ying froze. He looked up at the Ninth Emperor and panicked. That girl was Xinqingwan. So, do you now know why I want to kill you now? After saying that, the Ninth Emperor no longer gave Ouyang Ying a chance to speak, and with a mighty force, she strangled Ouyang Ying hard. Ouyang Ying spurted blood again, turning the ground red. His head moved for the last time, and then nothing. The young master of Xianming clan had lost his life just like that. Shen Qingwan silently walked to the ninth emperor's side with a longing look upon her face. Everyone else's eyes were filled with horror, and they looked at the ninth emperor with more fear. The people of Xianming clan finally reacted and surrounded the ninth emperor in the middle. Their young master had been killed before them. If they went back to Xianming clan, their master would not let them go. Now, they could only fight with the ninth emperor, even if they knew there was no chance of winning. The ninth emperor glanced at the people of Xianming clan coldly. She did not even need to make a move, because a powerful force had suddenly risen from the ground, hitting all the people of Xianming clan. Their body exploded violently, and blood spilled all over the ground. Her gaze was still domineering and fierce, as if she was the ruler of this world, and it made people tremble hard like in hell. The ninth emperor walked toward Zhang Tianwen. Her gaze was cold while her body set off a powerful storm. Feeling such strong force, Zhang Tianwen subconsciously gulped, and his body trembled. Actually, we're not here for a stroll. We heard that there's a strange object hidden here, so the ninth emperor, stopped and frowned. A strange object? Well, it seems that I will get something from this trip. All one, follow me, she said and smiled faintly. Shen Qingwan followed her obediently, docile and dutiful. She did not even glance at the people of Xianming clan lying on the ground. Her eyes were fixed upon the ninth emperor. Where is that strange object? She asked as she glanced at Zhang Tianwen coldly. Zhang Tianwen's face turned pale. His legs were trembling. He wanted to get away from the ninth emperor, but did not dare to move. I'm not sure. Oh, the ninth emperor raised an eyebrow. Then lead the way. I want to see what kind of strange object is out of the ground and attracts so many people too. I'm surprised that I still do not know about this. Those people were already frightened, who knew that they were so frightened that they almost collapsed when they heard the ninth emperor's last sentence. It was hard to believe that the ninth emperor knew that they had deliberately hidden the news to keep her from knowing about the strange object. Me for extra chapters. The more people knew about this matter, the lower their chances of winning. Each of them hoped that they could find it. However, if the ninth emperor already knew about it, they were afraid that even after they put their best effort into getting the treasure, it would not be theirs. Yet everyone was already here, and they did not look like they would retreat. Even if there was no chance of winning, maybe they could still pick up some things that the ninth emperor did not want. The ninth emperor walked ahead with Shen Qingwan, and the people behind them subconsciously sighed with relief when they saw that the ninth emperor was not paying attention to them. I heard that the eldest grandson of the Nan family is also here. TSK, the Nan family is really pitiful. The whole family has been killed, leaving only Nan Chongfeng alone. When Nan Chongfeng was young, he was hidden somewhere, giving him the chance to escape the disaster. After more than 10 years later, he came back to avenge the Nan family. Unfortunately, what is the point of taking revenge? The Nan family is no longer there, leaving him alone in the world. Nan Chongfeng? The ninth emperor paused for a moment. She did accidentally think that this name sounded good. She did not think much about the other. She shook her head, and her eyes were filled with some regret. The whole family has been killed. It's such big revenge, sighed poor Nan Chongfeng. Wait, soon. The noise in the desert once again went quiet. The ninth emperor was stunned. She turned around blankly. That person was the beautiful young man in white robes with long silver hair and a silver vertical line between the eyebrows. He was as beautiful as a stunning painting, and even the ninth emperor, who was used to seeing beauty, could not help but feel amazed at his beauty. This young man was too handsome, and he was the most beautiful-looking man she had ever seen. However, he was cold and expressionless. It's Nan Chongfeng of the Nan family. The crowd looked surprised. They knew that Nan Chongfeng was good-looking, but they did not expect this man to be this beautiful. They had long heard that there were countless beauties in the ninth emperor's manner, but the way she looked at Nan Chongfeng proved that the beauties in her manner were not as stunning as this Nan family's young master. Nan Chongfeng perhaps sensed her looking at him, so he looked up and met the ninth emperor's gaze in the air. However, he quickly withdrew his gaze shyly. Shen Qingwan was also a bit stunned when she saw Nan Chongfeng. but her expression changed as she looked at the ninth emperor next to her. Nan Changfeng was indeed a handsome young man, but it still could not compare to the ninth emperor's beauty. It was really hard for anyone to resist such a look. After Xin Qingwan saw that the ninth emperor was staring at Nan Changfeng, she could not help but pout, touching her face. Perhaps I'm not beautiful enough, and the ninth emperor doesn't want to look at me anymore? This Nan Changfeng, other than the looks, I really don't understand how he can attract the ninth emperor. Fortunately, the ninth emperor did not look too long. She then turned around and smiled faintly. She had liked beautiful people since childhood. Because of that, the girls in Cloud Mountain were all as beautiful as goddesses. However, her Feng Mountain had never accepted any men. Only Nan Changfeng. He was so beautiful that she almost could not look away. "Let's go," she said with a smile and shrugged. Everyone else came back to their senses and walked to the front. The most important thing today was to find the strange object. Me for extra chapters. Today's desert, for some reason, was so quiet. The quietness through the eerie aura made people shudder. The ninth emperor also did not know how long she must walk. She still did not find any strange object. Now, she even began to doubt whether this was a conspiracy against her. However, a few moments later, the whole desert suddenly shook. A fierce storm came. Sand and dust filled the sky, and some people with low strength directly disappeared into thin air in the storm, leaving no trace behind. "You lied to me?" The ninth emperor's voice was so cold that it could make people tremble. With these words, she made the present people panic. Zhang Tianwen's voice was filled with anxiety. "Why would we lie to you? We wouldn't have come along if we wanted to deceive you. We really heard that there are strange objects hidden here. Who knew that such things would happen?" His voice was tinged with tears and endless grievances. The ninth emperor turned and saw a huge python coming. This python was golden yellow, huge. It could swallow a dozen people in one bite. It was so big, and all the people were scared of it. Everyone was panicked. They just came to find a treasure, but who knew that they would encounter this kind of thing? The python moved too fast, rushing toward them through the sand and dust. The ninth emperor's face sank. An ancient fierce beast. I did not expect it would appear here. I guess it deliberately created this to attract people. It was a fierce beast, not just a surrounding spirit beast, and would not be driven by humans, much less be contracted by them, and it could even swallow heaven and earth. It was born to kill, and it had no other meaning of existence other than killing. This was the origin of the fierce beast. It indeed can swallow the world. An extremely nice voice came from the side. The ninth emperor turned to look, and her gaze fell upon the young man's stunningly beautiful face. The young man smiled gently. The smile was beautiful, like a hand that was tantalizing her heart. The moment the ninth emperor saw the young man, she had only one thought. She wanted to take him home and raise him. However, now it was too late. The golden python was already in front of her, and with just one bite, it swallowed a group of people fiercely. "All of you get out of the way." The ninth emperor jumped up to the sky, and a sword appeared out of thin air in her hand before she started stabbing the python several times with it. This was the only way to deal with the ancient fierce beasts. Hiss! The golden python hissed painfully, making the crowd tremble in fear. The ninth emperor's sword pierced through its tough skin, and blood flowed out, staining its skin red. The crowd was somewhat shocked. This was an ancient beast, and its body was like steel, tough and indestructible, but the ninth emperor could hurt it. Just how much power did it cost to do so? Everyone trembled. It seemed like the only one who could fight the ancient fierce beast was the ninth emperor. Therefore, even though many mainland people hated her, no one ever dared to provoke her. They could only curse her secretly and dared not even to say it out loud in front of her. Me for extra chapters. The ninth emperor's sword fell again, and this time she used more strength, and the long sword ruthlessly pierced into the golden python's skin, causing great pain to the golden python. Hiss! The golden python's eyes were red with a vicious look. "Tell me, did you intentionally create that vision?" The ninth emperor stood atop of the golden python, scanning it. She was still holding the long sword in her hand with a threatening look in her eyes. Blood dripped from the blade, causing the golden python's huge body to tremble. It tried desperately with all its might to throw the ninth emperor off its body, but the ninth emperor plunged the sword down again, heavily into its back. Hiss! The golden python was in pain. It was just hungry, and few people did come here nowadays, so it wanted to deceive some people to eat them. Who knew it would meet this vicious woman? Perhaps the pain was too intense. The golden python could not resist and hurriedly nodded. Its hissing was not as fierce as earlier. Are you the one who tricked people into coming here to satisfy your appetite? Hiss! The golden python nodded again, and its gaze was filled with tears. Its skin, harder than steel, was the reason why no one could hurt it. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.